Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this very special program today. I'm Jennifer Parazzini, Barnard class of 2010 and current chair of the Barnard Entrepreneurs Network, or BEnet. We're an alumni organization that seeks to create a context for building relationships among alumni entrepreneurs at all stages of business development within and across industries, and we're so happy to have you here with us today. First, a little note to all of our attendees. You will not have microphone or camera access during this online event. Attendees' voices, likeness, and/or images will not be captured by Barnard College. Written submission of questions may be shared during the Q&A portion of the event. Feel free to submit your questions as you think of them in the Q&A feature, and we will answer them at the end during the Q&A time. We also welcome you to continue this conversation after today by joining the BEnet LinkedIn group. We're beginning to generate compelling content featuring a wide variety of alumni entrepreneurs discussing important topics. And feel free to reach out to us directly with any questions, ideas, etc. The email is barnardentrepreneursnetwork@gmail.com, and we'll add both the link and the email address in the chat. And now I have the privilege of introducing our guests, Camille Varlet and Francine Glick. Camille is Barnard class of 2001 and is the founder of Mouth Off, the first and only product able to eliminate bad breath in under 60 seconds versus just temporarily hiding it like other products on the market today. Mouth Off launched direct to consumer in February 2021. Camille has over 10 years of consumer products and brand management experience and previously worked at Danone, L'Oreal, and American Express. She holds a BA from Barnard and an MBA from Columbia University. Francine is Barnard class of 1977 and she created the category of alcohol-free hand sanitizers and received 2 patents. She obtained national distribution in Bed Bath & Beyond, Whole Foods, Amazon, Kroger, and others. Previously, Francine spent a number of years in her own digital marketing company, as well as M&A at Barclays, where she advised many of the largest tech companies, including Intel and France Telecom. She is also currently founder and principal of the consulting firm Echo Strategic Consultants, which you'll be able to learn more about in another event we'll be hosting in December 2021. Francine has a BA in computer science from Barnard and an MBA from NYU Stern School of Business. I'd like to note that Camille and Francine have been friends of BEnet for quite a while. Their commitment to our group is so special, and I'm very excited to welcome them here today to have a conversation about finding success during the pandemic. Turning it over to you both.
Thank you so much.
Why don't you start, Camille?
Yeah, I mean, I can just start by talking about how Mouth Off came to be. And then I'll hand it over to you, Francine. So, I come from, 10 years of consumer products experience. I love the health and wellness space, and I love solving problems. And, I learned about this problem of bad breath, and that there were no products on the market today that really solved it, and that this is a problem that affects at least 1 in 3 people. So very widespread. And I came into contact with an ingredient supplier that had an ingredient that actually solved for this. So I negotiated a partnership with them, hired some food engineers, formulated with this ingredient, and launched. And we also have a patent pending on the dissolving gum formula.
That's terrific. You make it sound so much easier than I know it is.
We'll talk about some of the challenges in a little bit.
All right, so I founded my company Water Journey quite a while ago, way before COVID. The alcohol sanitizers had just come on the market, and I have 2 daughters, and I was carpooling them, and one complained that it was burning her skin when she put it on, and the other one complained that it smells. So I figured, there's got to be a better way of doing this. This is not a good solution. So I started working in my kitchen sink, and I mixed all these different ingredients together. I've always liked natural products and essential oils, and I'm a real label reader. So I read labels all the time. So I was really concerned about what would go in it. So I came up with something, and I thought, all right, let me take this to a chemist to commercialize it, because I was a computer scientist, not a chemist. So I worked with a chemist and we went back and forth. You know, he was trying to make it more chemically and I was making it less chemically. And we finally came up with a formulation. And I applied for patents. I ended up by getting 2 patents on it. And that's sort of how the company started.
That's amazing. And so you mentioned that you've had your company for quite a while, but going through COVID, how has COVID impacted the business? Has it been negative, positive, you know, and kind of where do you see it today?
People used to say, oh, you make a hand sanitizer. That's nice. And then suddenly with COVID, oh my God, you make a hand sanitizer. Suddenly I became everyone's best friend. I mean, it was crazy. It went nuts. And I had actually, a year before COVID started, I had started to get away from the company. I was pivoting away to my other business, which is a strategic planning company. I'll talk about that later. And suddenly, you know, I had, you know, a bunch of employees and everything. Then COVID hit. I just moved into New York from New Jersey. And it was funny because I started getting all of these orders. We were on Amazon. We had pulled out of retail. We weren't in retail anymore. We had gone through, before, we had gone through H1N1. So I knew what that looked like, but this was a little bit different because in H1N1, we were selling to retailers at the time. And as you know, with buyers, they're really hard to reach. They're very busy people. You know, you call them 100 times and they maybe call you, you may get them on a good day, but otherwise you never really talk to them. And when H1N1 hit, all the buyers started calling me. Like I had CEOs of company calling me, of like big companies, not little companies, but big companies. And they all wanted, you know, immediately, they needed stuff. And I'm like, what is going on out there? And so when this happened, I saw what was going to happen, but it was a little bit different because I was out of retail, but we're selling on Amazon. So now it's direct to consumer. So one day I noticed we had all these orders from Singapore and Hong Kong. And I'm thinking, I didn't know we sold to Singapore and Hong Kong. I thought we were just selling in the US because with Amazon, you have to sign up for different countries and stuff. I thought it must be a fluke. Somebody gave away my website name to somebody and with a big group of people or an influencer or something. And then the next day it happened. And this was in January when COVID hit. So this was sort of before we knew what was happening. And then suddenly more and more, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is like before, this is going to go crazy. So now at this point, I had very good relationships in place with all of my vendors. I contacted my contract manufacturer and I said, look, this is going to be really big. Are you ready to do a lot of manufacturing? And lucky for me, he was sort of in a downtime in terms of what he was doing. He said, absolutely. I contacted all my vendors to get, you know, components. For those who don't know, the formulation are called we use extracts for the formulation. Those are the raw materials. And then the bottle, the pump, the labels, the corrugated, those are the components. So I started ordering components and ordering components and ordering components like crazy. As a matter of fact, this is what our product looked like pre-COVID. I don't know if you can see it here. I'll hold it closer to me. Okay. As you can see, it has kind of a whitish top. And during COVID, this is what we went out with a black top, which never in my lifetime would I think I would use. But the vendor said, I only have black tops. I'm like, send me the black tops. And you know what? I told every customer they're going to come with black tops. And every customer said, send me the black tops. We sold every single one of those bottles. So it was really pretty crazy. It was a really crazy time for us. I don't know if you had the same experience.
I mean, for us, you know, we had not launched yet. And so we launched in the middle of COVID. We launched earlier this year. And, you know, what I guess how COVID impacted us and our business strategy was really that we actually had to become much more focused in our channel. strategy and what we were going to go after. When we initially had started working on Mouth Off last year and had done a lot of outreach, and we're starting to develop and secure some distribution partnerships with offices and some other non-traditional brick and mortar channels where Mouth Off could be discovered, and also had a direct to consumer strategy. And of course, all of this places closed. And so we really doubled down on direct to consumer and really had to find other ways of getting trial. A consumer product, a product that you consume, as you probably know and have experience with, a lot of times you do events, you hand out samples for people to try and, and become customers and convert. And so for us, we, did not have the ability or could not rely on any of those traditional vehicles for discovery. And so really had to focus on how we could do that online, how we could tell the story, and how we could get people to try the product on our website.
Yeah, that was a challenge.
Absolutely. Very, very, very interesting and special time. We do look forward to things opening back up, though, as they are, and being able to do some of those events. But it sounds like you did not have, in terms of business opportunity, you were just making the right product at the right time, to give you kind of this enormous boom. Were you doing any marketing? Did you think of any product, new product ideas? Did you have to hire differently? Were any of, your operations, sales, and marketing impacted?
Well, I had gone from a company that had 8 employees, plus the contract manufacturer, plus we outsourced a lot of different things. So to me, at this point, when COVID hit, it was just me. So it was all those years of experience came in handy because I was able to really do things very quickly. When everybody was at home complaining about being home with COVID, I was like out of my mind. I didn't have enough time to eat lunch or anything. I was so incredibly busy. It was such a crazy time. So, I was sort of gearing down, and then this hit. So I geared back up, took advantage of the situation, because that's what you do as an entrepreneur. When things are good, things are good. And, a lot of times you work really hard, but the environment is really what determines whether you're successful or not. You could be doing everything right and you have a bad environment. It's really hard.
And you were providing something that consumers really needed and were seeking out at a time when things couldn't find it anywhere else. So
I know but there were a lot of crazy things that went on during this time. At one point, Amazon stopped all sales of hand sanitizers in the middle of COVID because, I don't know, you might have heard about this on the news. They kept talking about this guy who bought all these hand sanitizers and then was selling them at an exorbitant price. So Amazon was really scared about this. Also, there were all these people who were like making this stuff in their bathtub. And so FDA was really concerned about what was going on. So Amazon put a stop to it. So suddenly I had no sales and I'm like, what's going on? And it was like, Amazon is like, it's very automated. So you don't never really speak to a person. So until you figure out what's going on and so forth. And I was like, it's a pandemic. You can't stop people from selling hand sanitizers. So then it was like, well, okay, you have to get approved. I'm like, but I'm already approved. I've been selling on your platform for years. Okay, fine. So you go to get approved again and you get to this page and it says, we're not approving anyone right now. So it was crazy. Then they started to bring back SKUs and people, but it was really nuts. And we also went through this cycle that we had done before is, it starts like this, it goes up like crazy. There's demand. There's a lot of supply. And then it just, first of all, there are 2 things that happen. The components stop. You can't get anything. you can't buy anything. The supply chain is just dead. Everybody's bought all the bottles, all the pumps, everything on the market. We make everything in the US, so we're in kind of better shape, but we had one thing that is not made in the US, which are wall dispensers. You know, the dispensers you see on the wall with hand sanitizer. And guess where those were made? Wuhan.
Of course. Wow.
I didn't know. I mean, you know, those were really hard to get. I ended up by buying dispensers on eBay and from Amazon or places that weren't using dispensers for hand sanitizer. They were using them for other things. But it was really kind of crazy.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, for us, you know, we had a lot of, supplier packaging issues as well. We initially were not planning on launching with a blister pack, which is what we actually launched with, but we were going to be having a refillable pack that was going to be made overseas. You know, everything kind of shut down. And so we had to quickly pivot. Another thing that happened was, actually food is considered essential. So the factories always stayed open for us. I'm sure similar to you, but people got sick. And because of all the cleaning and just health and sickness concerns, a lot of my manufacturing partners, and we're also, everything is made in the US, started running skeleton shifts and just, couldn't get orders out, in any kind of timely fashion. We ended up, because of this, losing the manufacturer, the contract manufacturer we were initially gearing up to launch with. So in the midst of this craziness, I had to find another one. And thank God, it's all about the relationships that you built. I had actually, been in contact with a lot of different manufacturers before COVID and had kept the relationships going. And we were able to go back to one of those original people I'd spoken to, almost 8 months prior, and start working with them. But, they only had certain packaging capabilities. And so, well, we just went with the capabilities that they had because that meant we actually launched. And
it's like the black tops.
Yeah, exactly. And if we decide to, have a packaging, a 2.0 version of our packaging down the line, that's okay for us. The importance was really to get to market, to bring this product to consumers, to get that proof of concept, and to learn and to iterate, to learn what worked, what customers liked, what might not work, so that we could continue to improve, knowing that, what you go to market with, what you launch with is never the end. It's never kind of, where you end up. And I would say then another thing, that, that affected us, or things that we had to change and think of during COVID was, when you think of bad breath, a lot of times, it's a worry that you have around social situations, whether you're going to an office meeting or to a networking event or about to go on a date. And all of those kind of social occurrences or opportunities for use of the product completely stopped. And so the question was, how does a brand like mine become relevant or make themselves relevant in this new reality of everybody staying at home? And one of the insights that we had was that mask breath, was a real thing. People were wearing masks, were smelling their breath, maybe for the first time. Some people might have never thought or known that they had bad breath. And now, I think we did a survey and saw that, 1/3 of people were more aware of the quality of their breath than they were before COVID. And so now we had the opportunity to be even more relevant to the consumers and to our customers by really, solving a problem that they might not have had or known they had before COVID. And so we definitely, put out messaging around that, and we think that, was something that definitely, worked for us. So
that's brilliant. I love that. Because I was wondering, like, how do you sell this stuff when nobody's outside, nobody sees anybody?
Yeah.
My husband might not like my bad breath, but I'm not clear I'm going to do anything about it as opposed to.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth is, we actually had a higher than expected demand. Even during the months of COVID, we sold out of our first production run in 3 months.
Wow.
And have made 2 production runs, that are bigger since, and we hope to continue to grow now that we have even more occasions, to be relevant, to our consumer and our customer now that everything is opening up and people are meeting in person again.
Yeah, I was kind of wincing before when you were talking about changing contract manufacturer, because under good circumstances, that's such a terrible thing, because it's your core business. You depend on them. No contract manufacturer, no business.
Yeah.
It's not like you maybe stop some of your marketing or something. This is really fundamental part of your business. And
No, absolutely.
I remember
This for us was a huge hurdle, like actually one of the biggest, supply chain. And we have now since, I think had to stay very close to our manufacturing partners. Our whole supply chain partners sounds like one of the reasons that you were able to supply your hand sanitizer product was also for that. But that's also meant that we have had to, be extra communicative with them, and also cut purchase orders. Sometimes, a couple months, weeks or months in advance of when
Right.
we would have otherwise, because lead times are much longer. Visibility into lead times is really kind of hazy. And just to ensure, a spot on the production line, those are some of the things that, we're still struggling with, and having to just do. I don't know what are some of the hurdles that you're seeing come through on your end?
We had problems in terms of managing inventory, not for us so much, but our vendors couldn't manage their inventory. It was moving so quickly. So I would place an order for something and I would pay for it. And then I'd get a call 3 days later. Oh, sorry, we sold this to someone else. We can't fulfill your order. Their inventory systems were not keeping up with what was going on. So what I did with my contract manufacturer, I never did this with any other contract manufacturer. Usually, we'd send him orders and then he would process the orders. And there's a certain amount of lead time, whatever, but this was happening on the go. So I literally set up a spreadsheet with all the orders that were coming in. These are from like distributors and stuff like that, and gave him access to this spreadsheet so we could double check each other, because customers would order 100 units, then 100 units, then 100 units, then 100 units. By the 4th order, you don't know if that's the 2nd order or the 3rd order, or the 4th order. It was just and I didn't want to be in a position where I sold inventory I didn't have. And, he was manufacturing, we were selling. So it was crazy, but it was the first time I ever did that, but it worked. It kept things clean.
And are, components available again? Are you able to go back to normal and, with your supply chain, or what are you still seeing challenges?
So now's the downside of that peak. So what happened is everyone manufactured. Now there's excess inventory. So we're all sitting with all this excess inventory. All the components manufacturers are begging me to buy stuff, but I have inventory that's filled. I'm trying to move my inventory. So that's my challenge, is how do I move that in a market that has so many hand sanitizers in it. I mean, you used to walk into a CVS and you maybe saw 2 or 3 hand sanitizers. Now you go in and you see like 30 of them.
Yeah. And so how do you, how are you thinking about, differentiating or really, making your product better known, or the choice hand sanitizers with all this added competition?
Well, we're trying to do some work in social media. That's one place. Also, we've been doing some licensing of our products so that companies, so I'm not in the manufacturing business anymore. Basically, they sign up to use our product and they can use it, they can manufacture it themselves. That's what we've been working on right now. So
Great.
that seems to be sort of moving, but I still have all this inventory. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. Also, we have to put an expiration date on our product. It doesn't really expire, but we have to put an expiration date. So it's 3 years. So
Wow.
that's the thing. Yeah. Do you need to put an expiration date on your product as well?
We
or-
do, absolutely. We have a 2-year, expiration, or, best buy date from date of manufacture.
Right. Okay. So you have less
Most
time.
ingestible products
Yeah.
definitely have either an expired or a best buy date on them.
Yep. So tell me, so how did you have to pivot, and do you have any tips for anybody on pivoting? Because I have a lot of tips on pivoting.
Yeah,
I'll let you go first.
For me, I think, in terms of pivoting, it's really, talking to potential customers, doing the research, gathering data points, and looking for insights. And I think really being flexible, and really understanding what the end goal is. And if there are hurdles, for me, it was the packaging that was getting in the way, or this one manufacturer couldn't, fill in this, Ziploc pouch that I wanted. How do you still make something happen and overcome the hurdles? And so I think, especially either in times of uncertainty or of challenges like a COVID, or when you're just getting started, you really have to be flexible and do, the least you can at the beginning to get the most information so that you can learn and continue to iterate and know that it's, never going to be perfect. So you might as well just get started, and start improving right at that moment.
Good advice.
And what about you?
Well, I actually, my pivot actually took place sort of before COVID, when I started this consulting company, and COVID sort of solidified the decision that I made about pivoting to another company. So one of the things that we do in this company is we developed a program for people who are either stuck or who need to pivot. So we developed a methodology.
You have the secrets. You have the secrets to how we should do this.
I have the secrets. I don't know, but anyway, I think we're gonna be back on December 7th with my partner, Shilpa Barry, who's also a Barnard alum. And we're gonna be talking about this, but I thought I would give people out there sort of an insight into the methodology that we use in terms of pivoting with our clients. So the first one is the identification. What's the scope of the problem? What are you really dealing with here? What are you trying to solve? The next one is, what is your vision in terms of what do you really want? If that's not clear, you can't get there if you don't know what it is. So I always say, write down your vision, make sure it's clear, and put it up and look at it every single morning. That's really helpful. The third one is, what techniques have you applied so far? We have clients that have tried something all the way to the end. We have others who've only got halfway there and then they stop for whatever reason. So you don't know if that technique works or not because you haven't taken it to the end. So that's 3. 4, how long have you been trying to do this? Have you been trying to pivot for, it seems like a silly question to ask, but people don't realize if you've been talking about pivoting for a month, okay, that's reasonable. If you've been talking about doing it for 5 years and you still haven't pivoted, either you don't want to pivot or you're not taking the time to do it properly. So it's important for people to understand what they've done. Principles 5 is principles and limitations. So what are you not willing to change? What are you willing to change? There's some real limitations when you're trying to pivot. There's certain things you just can't do, but then there are also a lot that are imagined limitations, especially when it comes to money. People have a very strange relationship to money that they bring into their business. So we look at that for them. 6 is brainstorming. You really want to think about all the alternatives that you have, and you want to look especially at the low-hanging fruit, which people tend to forget. They think if their problem is very big, the solution should be very complicated, but not always. Sometimes it's right in front of you. And finally, an evaluation of all the different alternatives. there might be more than one solution. By the time you go through this process, you might have two possibilities. And typically people have objections over, like, they have a hard time with money and time and delegation and learning. Those are the obstacles from moving forward and being able to pivot. So that's what we talk about. So we're going to be doing a workshop on this on December 7th.
No, that's great. If I could add a few of the things I think about, when I'm going through this process, or some advice that I would give as people are either getting started or thinking about pivoting, I think, gathering as much data as you can on either your current stage or where you want to go, and then test as much as you can, whether it's, the vision, a positioning concept, and get feedback.
Right.
And, ask a lot of why questions. Why did you say that? Oh, and because I think you just never know where that tunnel leads you, and you could learn something.
Correct.
Or it could give you an idea that you would have just never even thought of had you not gone down that tunnel. And I think there's qualitative and quantitative, information gathering and data, both give you different types of insights. Also, I personally very strongly believe in de-risking. And so that can either be done with data and testing. We tested everything, before launching Mouth Off, from the name to the packaging, to the branding, to the positioning statements. And there are just, quick, easy ways to do that. Some, can be just surveys that you put out or interviews that you do. I think that at least that gives you, again, just data points. And you also have to, de-risk this for yourself. If you're planning on, spending the next, I don't know how many years of your life pursuing a specific business, I think just like an investor would do due diligence, just like a partner, does due diligence, like you need to do your own due diligence, and make sure that, this is something worth spending the next, years, or at least, give yourself, the confidence that at least you've done that research, and you've done that for yourself as well. I also want to also try to remind myself, and I think hopefully it's useful to others, that in the end also it's still just work, and so it's not worth sacrificing your health or your relationships over. This is a job. Yes, it's an amazing job, and I feel privileged, to be an entrepreneur and to be running and growing my own business. But it's work, and there are days I don't like it, but and there are days that I love it, and but it's not worth hurting yourself. It's not worth not eating or drinking well, not and not spending time with your loved one and friends. So I think these are some things that I think are critical.
No, I totally agree. All great points. I one thing though you said about testing, and I agree with that. However, until you're out there, you don't know. You think you've tested something up the wazoo. I remember when the first time we pitched to Babies R Us, Toys R Us, it was the same company at the time. And, we had our packaging, it was perfect, whatever. And thankfully, we were about to run the labels, do a big run of labels. We went in and he goes, I don't like the label. He said, can you change the label? And I was like, of course. Now, if I had run 150,000 labels, I don't think I would have said, of course. I would have said, well, wait till the next run. But I said, of course, change the label, put whatever he want. He was happy. We made the sale. So sometimes you just have to get out there. You can test so much, but
and that's part of testing though, like you showed, you have to start somewhere, and you show something to somebody and you get feedback, right? And that's part of the iteration process. But if you don't start getting feedback,
right.
To get feedback, you need to show something.
Right.
Either write something down, take a picture, put something down, and I would start asking as many people, as one can. I think packaging also is just so subjective.
It is.
It's a really tough one. And, we've had a lot of people, ask about the name, about the packaging, and the truth is we really relied on data because I believe that a focus group of one which could be one person's opinion that gives you that feedback, doesn't mean a lot unless they're a buyer making, I guess, a really big, writing a big purchase order. But, if you hear that a second time, if you hear that a third time, if you hear that, a 10th time, then it's really time to listen and to start wondering, what's going on there.
Yeah, you also have to ask the right people, and your friends are not the right people. Your friends will say, yeah, I'll buy that. They'll never buy it. Oh, it looks wonderful. They might not like it. You have to ask real people, not your friends.
100%. And there are just ways now, of getting, even 25 or 50 answers for $50, right? And so,
Yes.
there are just so many ways now to survey either specific demographics or Gen Pop, and you can do that either with survey questions, or you could, just create some ads on Facebook and, and a landing page and see, does somebody click on that ad? Does somebody give you your email address? And those I think are much more realistic metrics, for what one can expect versus asking your friends or parents.
Yep. So I have a question for you. How did you find your place in the market with all the competition? How did you figure that out? How did you deal with competitors?
Yeah, for us, the entire idea of the business came from positioning ourselves as differentiated from competition. And we utilize that in explaining what we're all about. So the competition doesn't get rid of bad breath, it just hides or masks it. And so for us, it was really a direct, head against head for that. And so, and that really helped us kind of make a place, within the crowded marketplace and the competition, saying they just mask, we actually remove the sulfur compounds. Take a test, our product works on garlic breath, on hide it, we actually remove it because we remove what's causing the odor. And then I think, and people completely and totally get it. We're also differentiated in a bunch of different ways. Like our product dissolves in your mouth as you chew in under 60 seconds. So you chew it, it's gone, unlike a traditional gum that you have to keep on chewing. And we're also plant-based and, have all these other benefits to it. But in all of our testing, not just in the positioning, but also in our marketing, we've seen that, efficacy trumps everything and anything in terms of, what's truly meaningful to the consumer. And all these other things are great to have, but, they won't, make that final kind of, click to buy decision. So for us, we really, having learned all of that, and having that efficacy differentiator, really focus and have doubled down in all our communication on efficacy.
That's great.
But
Good for you.
Yeah.
And you said you're getting a patent. You have a patent pending.
Yeah, on method and product of dissolving gum. So
Excellent.
as a delivery mechanism for functional ingredients. So bad breath is just the beginning. Be on the lookout for more functionality in the coming years. So
okay. With the gum, with the gum?
Yep, with that format, absolutely.
That's great.
And how has your new pivoting consulting or guidance business been impacted, by the last months of COVID? And how are you finding customers?
And interesting because, a lot of it through referrals. Also with COVID, a lot of people have taken a look at what they're doing and decided, I think I want to be in a completely different space. So it's created a lot of opportunities for us in that respect.
And do you focus primarily on product or business pivots or personal career and life pivots?
It's mostly product, but a lot of personal stuff comes into it at the same time. They're not really disconnected.
Okay.
So we'll do both. And they're
That's great.
usually intertwined. It usually starts with a business problem and goes into a personal problem when we do the analysis.
And how long does the process usually take on average? I know it could, have
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. That's it. We
That's great.
promise 3 weeks because we don't return a 50-page, consulting report. That's not what we're about. We go in, we fix the problem. We're fast. We fix the problem. We have a lot of fun with our clients. And at the end, we give them a short report of what to do and they're ready to go.
That's great. Do you think, should we start looking at to see if there are any questions from the audience? Hopefully you all have found this valuable.
That was so great. And again, we're going to have an event with Francine back in December, all about pivoting, which just, I felt like this event would go hand in hand. So really looking forward to that. You'll see an announcement about that in the coming weeks. But yeah, we can certainly get to some Q&A. So the first question that we have is actually for Camille. Where are you advertising Mouth Off?
So during COVID, we really focused on Facebook and Instagram advertising. This is one of the most popular and common channels for acquisition for direct-to-consumer brands. We early on also tried Google keyword search ads, and we're finding that our acquisition costs were almost triple that of Facebook and Instagram. I think, you have to, again, test it and learn. And for us being, a small startup brand, we stopped after seeing the price and really doubled down on Facebook and Instagram just because we, wanted to invest in what we were seeing, a very high return in. We've also started doing some Google shopping, which is working for us, and are constantly looking. And I think about, how else do we diversify so that we're not reliant so much on just Facebook and Instagram. But in the early days, it's just a very good vehicle for that early traction and acquisition.
I just wanted to say that Google AdWords keywords used to be really, really effective. And now it's expensive and you get a lot of bots coming in. So you get like 1 million clicks and it doesn't really lead to much. So
yeah,
I think Facebook and Instagram are better, definitely better.
Yeah. And we, we've tried some influencer. We haven't cracked the nut, on influencer. We're planning on launching a referral program. So we're definitely looking at a lot of different things. But we thought that we were going to be able to, find people who were actively searching for bad breath solutions. So maybe somebody who has chronic halitosis or, on the Google search, Google, keyword search ads, and, that they would convert because they're specifically looking for a solution to that problem, and we just found that that was just too expensive as a channel, and that was a surprise to us because we initially thought that was going to be almost low-hanging fruit in terms of our marketing strategy. But again, test and learn and iterate.
Great. And just a reminder, anybody who still has questions, please enter them in the chat. But we do have a next one. This is for Francine. So after the surge of, I guess, the pandemic, do you see any decline in buyers or change in buyers?
There are more buyers out there than there used to be. You mean like consumers, right? Is that what you're, when you say?
Yeah.
When you say buyers? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm assuming it's consumers. There are more consumers now than there used to be because a lot of people who never used hand sanitizers are now using hand sanitizers. It's sort of like seatbelts. Once you get used to wearing seatbelt, you keep wearing seatbelts. You don't stop doing it. But there's just so much in the marketplace, and that there's just a time that has to go by. And I don't know how long that time is, but there's an amount of time that has to go by before the inventory works its way through, and then it'll even out. But it's at a higher level than where it was pre-COVID.
Very interesting. I always loved hand sanitizer, for the record. It's that living in the city after the subway, needed to use some hand sanitizer. Okay, so I guess this is for either of you. Did any of you find it harder to find funding if you were trying to fundraise at the time?
During
I
COVID?
was trying.
During
Francine,
COVID,
were you fundraising?
No.
I
was fulfilling orders.
Yeah, I was. I actually was part of an accelerator program early last year called ERA, Entrepreneur Roundtable Accelerator, based here in New York. We started in person and then went virtual halfway through. And, it was, it's interesting because, there was just a lot of talk. So I think, everything froze, in the early months of COVID, because there was a lot of insecurity and nobody knew what was going on. And a lot of the funds or investors were needing to support, and diverted a lot of the cash that they had to existing portfolio companies to make sure that they weathered some of the challenges, that these companies were seeing, as a result of COVID. And then I heard that there was all this money floating around. I had a very hard time fundraising, I will tell you. I was also pre-product, pre-revenue at the time. And we ran out of samples. We had some samples made by our lab and weren't able to have it, ran out, didn't have any more. And so things like that made it hard, but just in general, I think, if you were in market and showing a lot of momentum, maybe the checks, were written much faster than I saw them written. But I would, be doing everybody a disservice if I, weren't being honest and saying that, every dollar for me was incredibly tough to raise, and it really does, take 100 calls to get that first check. I think literally it was like a few calls after my 100th that, I got, half my round funded. And I found, yes, during COVID for me, especially if you don't have momentum metrics, or if you weren't in like one of the really hot spaces, health tech or some of these kind of, launching companies in these very buzzworthy sectors that like now every portfolio company was just trying to get one company, under their umbrella. I thought it was, and I think that, really important to, be able to communicate the traction, the momentum, and find valuable KPIs. And also just know the investor pool, that invests in the specific, part of the type of raise, that you're in the process of doing, so you don't waste your time.
Did you find the accelerator group was helpful to you?
Yes. I thought that they were incredibly helpful, not only in terms of getting me ready to raise money, to pitch. Like, I think that the way that I pitch now is completely different, than before. But I also understand a lot of things about fundraising that I might not have understood, the different, ways, pre-money valuation versus post-money, things that I just had absolutely no idea about, that nobody had explained, that I think, can be, tricky. And, they're an investor, and they're a resource and a partner, until, the company is no longer something that I'm working on. Right. And so I was just in their office last week. They just made an introduction last week. I speak to them regularly, and yeah, for me, it was monumental in terms of, the change that it did to my business, and also the founder community that came with it. And I think, one of the other pieces of advice that I would have for any founder or anybody wanting, to launch or is in the process of, or in the early stages, is really finding, your support network, whether it's a mentor or not, or whether it's, a Facebook group, of founders, or at school, or in whichever way, because not just for resources, but also just for mental sanity. And sometimes,
especially for that.
exactly, when you just need a venting session, I think that goes a long way. Otherwise, it's a lonely journey.
Yeah. I was in one as well, and I found it really invaluable. It's really
That's
good.
great. What did you
It's
do?
lonely being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's lonely, essentially. And you have people who work for you, but they're not like you. They're just different than you are. So you need to find other, CEOs or founders or whatever you want to call them.
Francine, which accelerator did you do?
It was one in New Jersey.
Okay.
Because I was living in New Jersey at the time. So it was good. A lot of relationships in place, like you said, and I had been in investment banking, so I knew how to present to people, yet, things change over time. How do you develop your deck? What do you put into it? Then you get to see the other people in the accelerator, what they're doing and the mistakes they're making. So you learn from that as well. So it's all very, very helpful, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like
and any
fundraising.
opportunity to grow your network, I think,
Yes.
again, because, one day you might need an introduction to, a buyer at Target, and somebody might, who is at the accelerator might be able to make that introduction to the Target, to somebody at Target. Maybe they're not the buyer, but they're, so I think,
Right.
again, just investing and nurturing the network, is always going to be only helpful to you, I think, personally, to enrich one's life, but also for the business.
I think
I'm
that
so sorry, Jennifer, I spoke over you.
No, it's fine. I was going to say, I think fundraising and accelerators can be a whole other talk, maybe a whole series of talks, because that's our number one question. And everything you said, both of you, resonated with me, even in the biotech space. So,
but if I could say one last thing, not all accelerators, just like not all partners, just like not all investors are created equal. And so, I highly recommend for anybody considering an accelerator program to do your due diligence, because you are most likely giving them, a big chunk, relatively of your business. And again, they're going to be partners there, for the life of your company. And so making sure that, you do the same diligence on them that they do on you.
So I think we'll do one last question. I like this one, and I'll let you each briefly answer it. Even though this was one of the most stressful times all of us have endured, do you think that there's any positive growth that occurred during this time, even personal growth?
Francine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very, very outgoing person. I love to be with people. I'm, easygoing. I sort of enjoyed being at home and not seeing people for a while. I learned that about myself, that maybe I'm not as outgoing as I think. I really had a good time being at home in my little New York City apartment, which shocked me. On the other hand, now that I'm seeing people, it's like, oh, this is kind of nice. So I guess I learned about myself that I'm sort of happy wherever I am in whatever space, and I'm just that kind of a person. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, absolutely. And so for me, it was twofold. I think because there was nothing to do and nowhere to go, I did feel guilty, canceling on a friend or what have you, because I had business obligations. And so it really kind of gave me, a lot of space to double down and really focus on the business, and fundraising and all these things that needed to get done during this time, without, feeling torn in multiple directions. And, but also say, I met and fell in love with my about to be husband, also during COVID, and during that time as well, because we weren't traveling for work, or, again, having, 2-3 events every night, like in the good old days of New York City, also gave us an opportunity to really spend time with each other, get to know each other, and fall in love. So I have a, personal and professional. I think it was, with all the challenges that it had, I think those were, two lights.
Do we have any other last minute questions from the audience? I'll give it a few seconds. Type fast. Okay. Well, that was really great. I'll do a bit of a closer here just to wrap up. But I want to thank you for sharing your time with us today. And thank you to our panelists for providing insights on such an inspirational topic. I think this is something that we've all been thinking about over the last almost 2 years. As a reminder, we welcome you to continue this conversation after today by joining our BEnet LinkedIn group, and that link is going to be shared in the chat, and encourage you to reach out to us directly at Barnard Entrepreneurs Network at gmail.com. Before we go, I want to remind everyone that we are in the midst of the Barnard Year of Science, something that's near and dear to my heart, a year-long celebration of all things STEM at the college. Through our world-class research programs and robust curriculum, Barnard is creating a new generation of women leaders in STEM. From neuroscience to psychology to the intersection of science and the arts and beyond, Barnard's leading faculty, brilliant students, and trailblazing alumni are shaping their fields and addressing the most pressing challenges of our time through cutting-edge research and practice. During the Barnard Year of Science, the entire college community is coming together to showcase this incredible work, and we hope you'll continue to be a part of it. To learn more about Barnard's eminence in science, what our faculty, students, and alumni are working on, and to get details about upcoming events, please visit yearofscience.barnard.edu. Thank you again, and please remember to take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you both.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
And good luck to all the entrepreneurs out there.
Yes.